February 24, 1978. 5 friends with intellectual disabilities drive into the Sierra Nevada mountains after cheering at a college basketball game. They're excited about their own upcoming tournament. Their team, the Gateway Gators, is set to compete for a chance to win a free trip to Los Angeles. But they never make it home that night. They never make it to their tournament. In fact, 4 of them will never be seen alive again. When their car is found abandoned on a remote mountain road, it raises more questions than answers. The 1969 Mercury Montego is in perfect working condition, with enough gas to get home, yet it sits empty in the snow 70 miles off their route. No footprints, no signs of struggle, just an unlocked car with a window rolled down in freezing temperatures. Months later, when the spring thaw melts the mountain snow, searchers make a horrific discovery. 4 bodies scattered across the wilderness, but the 5th man, Gary Mathias, has vanished completely. Most shocking of all, one victim survived for 3 months in a Forest Service trailer, surrounded by food and heating supplies, yet died of starvation. The scene suggests someone else was with him, but who? And where did they go? Before we dive into this case, make sure to like this video and subscribe. This is a story that will stay with you long after it ends. The 5 young men who disappeared into the Sierra Nevada mountains that February night were known affectionately in their communities as the Boys. Each faced intellectual disabilities or psychiatric conditions that made navigating daily life challenging, but together they had found friendship, purpose, and joy through their shared love of sports. Gary Mathias, 25, was perhaps the most complex member of the group. A Marysville resident and Army veteran, he had developed drug problems during his military service in West Germany that eventually led to a schizophrenia diagnosis and psychiatric discharge. After returning home to his parents, Mathias struggled initially with psychotic episodes and nearly faced assault charges twice. But by 1978, he had become what his doctors called one of our sterling success cases, managing his condition with medication while working in his stepfather's gardening business. His 4 companions each lived with their own challenges. Ted Wire, 32, and Jack Hewitt, 24, both had intellectual disabilities, while Bill Sterling, 29, and Jack Madruga, 30, were considered slow learners. Madruga was also an Army veteran. All 5 men lived with their parents in Yuba City and nearby Marysville, creating a tight-knit support network that extended beyond just the friends themselves to include their families. Their greatest passion was basketball. The 5 men played together on the Gateway Gators, a team supported by a local program for people with disabilities. The sport gave them structure, teamwork, and a sense of accomplishment that filled their lives with purpose. They were scheduled to play their first game in a week-long Special Olympics tournament on February 25th, with the winning team earning a free week-long trip to Los Angeles. The night before, they had carefully prepared their uniforms and asked their parents to wake them up on time, demonstrating the excitement and responsibility they felt about the upcoming competition. On the evening of February 24th, the group decided to make the 50-mile drive north to Chico State to watch UC Davis play basketball. It was a spontaneous decision that reflected their love of the sport and their desire to support college basketball. Jack Madruga, the only member besides Mathias who held a driver's license, drove the group in his distinctive turquoise and white 1969 Mercury Montego coupe. Despite the cool February temperatures in the upper Sacramento Valley, the men wore only light coats, expecting to be home within a few hours. The evening went exactly as planned initially. They watched UC Davis win their game against Chico State, then walked a short distance from campus to Bears Market in downtown Chico. Just before the store's 10 p.m. closing time, they purchased snacks, sodas, and cartons of milk, a detail that would later become crucial evidence. The store clerk remembered them specifically because she was annoyed that such a large group had arrived so close to closing time, delaying her end-of-shift procedures. After leaving Bears Market, The five friends climbed back into Madruga's Mercury and began what should have been a simple 50-mile drive home. Their families were waiting for them, some staying up specifically to hear about the game and ensure they arrived safely. But somewhere between Chico and home, something went catastrophically wrong. The five men were never seen alive again, launching one of California's most baffling missing persons cases. When morning arrived on February 25th and the five men had not returned home, their worried families immediately contacted police. The absence was completely out of character for the group, who were reliable about coming home and communicating with their parents. Police in Butte and Yuba counties quickly began searching along the expected route between Chico and the men's homes, but found no trace of them or Madruga's distinctive Mercury Montego. The breakthrough came several days later when a Plumas National Forest ranger contacted investigators. He had seen a car matching the Mercury's description parked along Oroville-Quincy Road in the forest on February 25th. At the time, he hadn't thought it significant since many people drove that route on winter weekends for cross-country skiing, but after reading the missing persons bulletin, he recognized the vehicle and led deputies to its location on February 28th. What they found at the scene defied all logical explanation. Madruga's Mercury sat abandoned at 4,400 feet elevation on a remote mountain dirt road, approximately 70 miles from Chico and far off any direct route home to Yuba County. The car was stuck in snowdrifts, but the snow wasn't particularly deep. Five healthy young men should have easily been able to push the vehicle free. Even more puzzling was the car's condition. When police hot-wired the Mercury, the engine started immediately and the fuel gauge showed 1/4 tank of gasoline remaining, more than enough to complete the journey home. The car keys were missing, initially suggesting mechanical problems, but the vehicle ran perfectly. Most mysteriously, despite having traveled a long distance up a rough mountain road with bumps, ruts, and potholes, the Mercury's undercarriage showed no dents, gouges, or mud scrapes, not even on its low-hanging muffler. Inside the car, investigators found evidence that the men had been there after leaving Chico: empty wrappers and containers from their Bears Market purchases, programs from the basketball game, and a neatly folded California road map. However, the car was found unlocked with a window rolled down, which Madruga's family said was completely unlike him. The families could offer no explanation for why the group would have driven up a winding mountain road on a winter night without extra clothing. Madruga's parents emphasized that their son disliked cold weather and had never been in the mountains. Sterling's father had once taken his son fishing in that general area, but the younger man hadn't enjoyed the experience and never returned. Search efforts in the immediate vicinity were severely hampered by a snowstorm that struck the day after the car's discovery. When searchers and snowcats nearly became lost themselves 2 days later, the search was called off due to continuing bad weather. The five men had seemingly vanished into the wilderness, leaving behind only their abandoned car and a growing list of unanswered questions that would baffle investigators for months to come. As the investigation continued through the winter and spring of 1978, police received numerous reported sightings of the five men throughout California and beyond. Most were easily dismissed, but 2 accounts stood out as credible and deeply unsettling, painting a picture of the men's final hours that raised more questions than answers. The first came from Joseph Shawns of Sacramento, who had inadvertently spent the night of February 24th to 25th in the same area where the Mercury was found. Shawns had driven to his cabin to check snow conditions for a weekend ski trip with his family. Around 5:30 p.m., his car became stuck in snow about 150 feet up the road from where the Mercury would later be discovered. While trying to free his vehicle, Shawns began experiencing early symptoms of a heart attack and retreated to his car, keeping the engine running for heat. 6 hours later, while lying in severe pain, Shawns saw headlights approaching from behind. Looking out, he observed a car parked behind him with its headlights on and a group of people around it. One, appearing to be a woman holding a baby. When Shawns called out for help, the group immediately stopped talking and switched off their headlights. Later, he saw flashlights approaching from the same direction, But again, the lights went out when he called for assistance. Shantz also recalled a pickup truck briefly parking 20 feet behind him before continuing down the road, though he later admitted he couldn't be certain of this detail due to his delirious state from pain. After his car ran out of fuel in the early morning hours, Shantz walked 8 miles to a lodge where the manager drove him home. They passed the abandoned Mercury at exactly the location where Shantz remembered hearing the voices. Doctors later confirmed he had indeed suffered a mild heart attack. The second significant sighting came from a store clerk in Brownsville, 30 miles from the abandoned car site. On March 3rd, after seeing missing person flyers offering a $1,215 reward, she contacted police to report that 4 men matching the descriptions had stopped at her store the day after the disappearance. The store owner corroborated her account, and police considered her a credible witness. According to the woman, the men arrived in a red pickup truck, not Madruga's Mercury. She immediately noticed they weren't local because of their big eyes and facial expressions. 2 men she identified as Hewitt and Sterling used the telephone booth outside, while 2 others, believed to be Wire and Hewitt according to the store owner, came inside and purchased burritos, chocolate milk, and soft drinks. The behavioral details seemed consistent with the missing men's personalities. Wire's brother noted that his sibling would eat anything he could get his hands on, and was often accompanied by Hewitt. Meanwhile, Hewitt's brother confirmed that Jack hated using telephones so much that family members typically answered calls for him, explaining why he might have been making calls while others shopped. These sightings suggested the men had survived at least one night in the mountains and had somehow acquired different transportation. But they also raised disturbing questions. Why hadn't they gone home? Why were they traveling in a pickup truck instead of seeking help? And, most troubling of all, who was the woman with the baby that Shantz had seen? And what connection did she have to the 5 missing men? The spring thaw of 1978 finally provided the answers investigators had been seeking, though the discoveries raised even more disturbing questions about what had happened to the 5 friends in the Sierra Nevada wilderness. On June 4th, with most of the high-elevation snow melted, a group of motorcyclists ventured to a Forest Service trailer at a remote campsite approximately 19.4 miles from where the Mercury had been abandoned. The trailer's front window was broken, and when they opened the door they were overwhelmed by the stench of decomposition. Inside, they found the body of Ted, Wire. The discovery triggered an intensive search of the surrounding area. The following day, remains identified as Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling were found on opposite sides of the road, 11.4 miles from the abandoned car. Madruga's body had been partially consumed by scavenging animals, while only scattered bones remained of Sterling. Autopsies revealed both men had died of hypothermia, likely succumbing together as one stayed beside his dying friend. 2 days later, Jack Hewitt's father made the heartbreaking discovery of his son's backbone under a manzanita bush 2 miles northeast of the trailer. Nearby shoes and jeans helped identify the remains, and the next day a deputy found Hewitt's skull 300 feet downhill. Like the others, Hewitt had died of hypothermia, but it was the condition of Ted Wire's body and the evidence inside the Forest Service trailer that transformed this from a tragic case of men lost in the wilderness into something far more mysterious and disturbing. Wire had survived for approximately 3 months after the group's disappearance, living in the trailer before dying of a combination of starvation and hypothermia. His body, wrapped in 8 sheets, had lost nearly half of his original 200 pounds. His beard growth suggested he had lived slightly more than 3 months from his last shave, and his feet were severely frostbitten, almost gangrenous. Most puzzling was the abundance of survival supplies that Wire had apparently ignored. The trailer's fireplace remained unused despite ample matches and paperback novels for kindling. Heavy forestry clothing that could have kept him warm remained stored and untouched. A dozen sea-ration cans from an outside storage shed had been opened and consumed, but a locker containing enough dehydrated food to feed all 5 men for a year hadn't even been opened. Similarly, a nearby shed contained a butane tank that, if opened, would have heated the entire trailer. Evidence suggested Wire hadn't been alone. Gary Mathias's tennis shoes were found inside the trailer, and the C rations had been opened with a P-38 military can opener that only Mathias or Madruga would have known how to use from their Army service. The sheets covering Wire's body indicated someone else had cared for him, as his gangrenous feet would have made it impossible for him to cover himself. Personal effects on a table beside Wire included his wallet with cash, a ring, and a gold necklace, plus a gold watch that his family said wasn't his and a partially melted candle. Wire was wearing a velour shirt and lightweight pants, but his shoes were missing, presumably taken by Mathias, whose feet may have been too swollen from frostbite to fit his own sneakers. The evidence painted a chilling picture. At least 2 of the men had reached the trailer alive, one had cared for the other as he slowly died, and then the survivor had ventured back into the wilderness, leaving no trace. Gary Mathias has never been found. The discovery of 4 bodies in the Sierra Nevada wilderness provided answers about the fate of the Yuba County Five, but the case remains one of California's most baffling unsolved mysteries more than 4 decades later. Despite extensive investigation by multiple law enforcement agencies, no definitive explanation has ever been established for why 5 men with intellectual disabilities drove 70 miles off their route into remote mountains on a winter night, or what happened to them there. The official investigation concluded with a theory that attempts to explain the basic sequence of events, though it leaves many crucial questions unanswered. Investigators believe the men may have taken a wrong turn near Oroville while attempting to visit friends that Mathias had in the small town of Forbestown. Once on the mountain road, they abandoned their perfectly functional car for reasons that remain unexplained and chose to continue forward rather than return the way they came. The day before their disappearance, a Forest Service snowcat had traveled that route to clear snow from the trailer roof, leaving tracks through 4 to 6 foot snowdrifts. Police theorized the men decided to follow these tracks, believing they would lead to shelter. During the grueling trek through deep snow and freezing temperatures, Madruga and Sterling likely died of hypothermia partway to the trailer, followed soon after by Hewitt. Wire and Mathias apparently reached the trailer, broke the window to enter, and survived for weeks or months. However, their failure to utilize available heating and abundant food supplies suggests they may have feared arrest for burglary or theft, or simply lacked the cognitive ability to access the resources that could have saved their lives. After Wire's death, Mathias presumably attempted to return to civilization through the wilderness and perished somewhere in the vast forest. The case had profound impacts on families and communities throughout Northern California. The tragedy highlighted the vulnerability of individuals with intellectual disabilities and the need for better support systems and safety protocols. Wire's family emphasized that his cognitive limitations meant he often lacked basic survival instincts and common sense, making the mountain ordeal even more tragic. The mysterious circumstances have kept the case alive in public consciousness for decades. The presence of credible witnesses who saw the men after their disappearance, the puzzling abandonment of their functional vehicle, and especially the unexplained survival period in the trailer have fueled ongoing speculation about potential foul play. Some investigators have never completely dismissed the possibility that the men encountered someone in the mountains who either harmed them directly or influenced their fatal decisions. Gary Mathias remains officially missing, with his photograph distributed to mental institutions throughout California over the years. Despite numerous reported sightings and continued investigation, no trace of him has ever been confirmed. His family continues to hope for answers, while law enforcement maintains the case remains open, though active investigation has long since ended. The Yuba County Five case serves as a reminder that some mysteries may never be fully solved, regardless of extensive investigation and public interest. The disappearance of the Yuba County Five represents one of the most heartbreaking and perplexing mysteries in American crime history. 5 friends who found joy and purpose in their shared love of basketball became victims of circumstances that remain unexplained more than 40 years later. Their story reminds us of the vulnerability of individuals with intellectual disabilities and the tragic consequences when support systems fail. What makes this case particularly haunting is not just the mysterious circumstances of their disappearance, but the agonizing evidence of survival and missed opportunities for rescue. Ted Wyer's 3-month ordeal in the Forest Service trailer, surrounded by food and heating supplies he couldn't or wouldn't use, represents one of the most tragic examples of how cognitive limitations can become fatal in survival situations. The case also highlights the importance of never giving up on missing persons investigations, even when conventional explanations seem impossible. The credible witness sightings suggesting the men survived their first night and acquired different transportation indicate there may have been opportunities for intervention that were missed. The mysterious woman with the baby seen by Joseph Shons remains an unexplained element that could hold keys to understanding what really happened. Perhaps most significantly, the Yuba County Five case demonstrates how society's most vulnerable members can become victims not just of crime, but of circumstances beyond their ability to comprehend or navigate. The 5 men were living full lives within their capabilities, contributing to their community through their sports team and finding joy in their friendships. Their tragedy serves as a reminder of our collective responsibility to protect and support individuals with disabilities. Gary Mathias's continued absence leaves the case forever incomplete, a missing piece that prevents full closure for the families and investigators who have spent decades seeking answers. His survival in the trailer suggests he may have been the most capable member of the group, making his disappearance even more puzzling and tragic. The memory of Bill Sterling, Jack Hewitt, Ted Wyer, Jack Madruga, and Gary Mathias lives on not just in the ongoing mystery of their fate, but in the reminder they provide about the importance of inclusion, protection, and never underestimating the value of every human life. If this case moved you, please like this video and subscribe for more investigative stories. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think happened to the Yuba County Five? Sometimes the most important stories are those that remind us how precious and fragile life can be.